This is the Kaiser Report, the show that keeps it real in a world that's becoming increasingly more surreal. Haha, yeah. Hey, Stacey.
Hey, Max. So we're back from Puerto Rico, but I could not really leave Puerto Rico spiritually or mentally, so I dressed kind of like one of the buildings in Old San Juan.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love the color. Fantastic.
So while we were in Puerto Rico, Naomi Klein, you know, the famous No Logo author, she had written a piece for The Intercept, and I wanted to follow up on that, and then basically go over our perceptions after being in Puerto Rico for nearly 2 weeks and see, like, part of America, what we feel about it and what our assessment of it and what rebut some of her arguments here. It's a really good piece she wrote for The Intercept, The Battle for Paradise. Puerto Ricans and ultra-rich Puertopians are locked in a pitched struggle over how to remake the island. Now, first of all, she did go around the island, and she went to a place called Casa Pueblo, which is in an area called Adjutas, which is basically in the middle of the island, a little bit to the west. And there's this one place called Casa Pueblo. It's this beautiful pink building. Everything is bright colored there. And it was the only place that had electricity after the hurricane in the whole region because they had solar panels on the rooftop. And so they were able to, provide electricity. So her takeaway was that, in part, the spread of the gospel of renewables in the weeks after the storm, Casa Pueblo handed out 14,000 solar lanterns, little square boxes that recharge when left outside during the day, providing a much-needed pool of light by night. More recently, the community center has managed to distribute a large shipment of full-size solar-powered refrigerators, a game-changer for households in the interior that still don't have power. Casa Pueblo has kicked off a hashtag Consol, and this is, the attempt by them to bring solar power and the grid to the network. Remember, PREPA, the state-owned electric company, is the one that controls the electricity grid in Puerto Rico. It's a state-controlled PREPA, which built a system that relied on oil imports from America, expensive oil imports from America, because remember the Jones Act, you've got to have a U.S.-built and manned crew bringing in the shipments of the oil. So PREPA is the one that built the system that failed. The people are the ones that built the renewable solar system that succeeded.
Great points. So how does Naomi Klein fit into this?
Naomi Klein is hailing these local people who are, champions of doing their stuff there. And she's now against, however, all the rich crypto people coming into the island that has been abandoned by 250,000 people. 250,000 Puerto Ricans left the island after the hurricane, mostly going to Florida, New York. And here she's talking about what she saw at the same crypto conferences that you and I were at. We observed some of these. There were 3 or 4 back-to-back. Here's her assessment of what she saw at the same event we were at. Conference attendees also learned that if they move their own residency to Puerto Rico, they will not only be able to surf every single morning, but also win vast personal tax advantages. Thanks to a clause in the federal tax code, U.S. citizens who move to Puerto Rico can avoid paying federal income tax on any income earned in Puerto Rico, and thanks to another local law, Act 22, they can also cash in on a slew of tax breaks and total tax waivers that includes paying 0 capital gains tax and 0 tax on interest and dividends sourced to Puerto Rico, and much more, all part of a desperate bid to attract capital to an island that is functionally bankrupt. So she's against this immigration. She's against the immigration to Puerto Rico of rich people from the U.S., many of whom are indeed escaping taxes. We'll go into that in a bit. But, this I position as a notion that immigration, we know, is good for the mainland United States. I believe Naomi Klein would agree with that. Many left-wing progressive people say immigration is good. These people coming into the United States are good. I would assume having immigrants come to Puerto Rico is also a good thing.
So Naomi Klein, the famed author who is writing extensively on environmental issues and social justice issues, went to these conferences in Puerto Rico And her takeaway was that a bunch of rich people have showed up, and this is a danger to the local economy and to the local fabric of society. So the first thing that strikes me is that lefties, like Naomi, feel they have a monopoly on good intentions, which I'm not sure where that comes from. They have a monopoly on being stagnant and not putting forward any policies that gain traction that actually end up in social engineering, not since FDR. But since in the modern era, they've got no actual policies that have been effectively enacted because they always hide in the cave of good intentions, and they don't want to actually stick their toe into doing something that would require taking any risk, as Nassim Taleb would call it, skin in the game. They seem bereft of wanting to ever have any skin in the game, number one. Number two, apparently she was at the conference. However, I didn't see her at the conference, and I was there every day at the conference.
Well, in fact, I know you were not at the conference she was at. I know you were in the actual building. It was in the Vanderbilt, the Condado Vanderbilt, but you and I did not attend that conference. We were by the pool on those 2 or 3 days. It was an event that was like $4,000 to attend. We were not going to pay $4,000, $8,000 to attend it. There were 3 conferences. Including the one she went to. We went to D10E and Coin Agenda. This was the one that was in the middle. It did happen in our building. We didn't attend that. Brock Pierce had given the keynote address. The governor had attended this event as well. We did not attend it, but I do know, like, she has her vision of it was much more negative in terms of...
In other words, I was not aware that she was at the conference.
Yes,
I was there. I didn't hear Naomi Klein was there.
No.
That's what I'm saying. And whether she was physically in that building next door is not the point. The point is I had no idea she was there. And I wouldn't expect her to be there, because I wouldn't expect her to have any positive input into something like this, because her understanding of technology and crypto is zero. Obviously, in this Intercept article, she's a nobody. And that was clear. And her comments are equally bereft of anything substantial as it relates to economics, the economy, and cryptocurrencies. And once again, Brock Pierce was character assassinated.
I'll read the tweet from that.
She character assassinated Brock Pierce, just as John Oliver, who's an immigrant in America, character assassinated Brock Pierce.
Well, Brock Pierce is a very complicated story. He's a very controversial character.
But it's a personal story and not the actual economics on the ground story.
Okay, but let's go into the economic story. Let's go into the tax story.
Yeah, let's do that.
Forget her personality or Brock's personality or John Oliver's personality or anybody's personality.
Well, that's what she brings it on that level. She brings it on herself.
But this tweet I'm going to read from her is totally nothing personal, specifically about taxes. Here's the thing, Brock Pierce. You cannot lead a movement of crypto tax dodgers to a disaster-ravaged island and expect to be taken seriously when you talk about giving back. Taxes are how normal people give back. Pay your damn taxes, then tell us about your good deeds. So here's a woman who goes around the world, goes to places like Argentina that gets plundered, goes to various disaster zones around the world. You and I have been to many economic disaster zones. She goes to all sorts of environmental disaster zones and economic disaster zones. But here she is telling a guy to pay taxes to the U.S. federal government, where almost all of the discretionary budget goes to the Pentagon and to basically causing the very things she goes around the world trying to fight. On top of that, we have to recall what Bitcoin's very first words were, and that was the Times, January 3rd, 2009. Chancellor on brink of second bailout of banks. How did the Chancellor of the United Kingdom have the cash on hand to bail out the fraud that took down our global financial system? How did the Chancellor have so much money to bail out all those banks?
Right, from taxes, the pool of taxes, and of course all the corporations and the energy corporations like Exxon and others that are causing environmental problems get huge subsidies that are paid for by taxes. And so Naomi Klein, I don't understand where she comes up with this idea that pay your taxes first and then circle round back and think about distribution of equality and opportunity second. I mean, I guess because she's Canadian, and Canadians have a different mindset in terms of how the economy works, because it's a very different organized economy in Canada than it is in the United States. And so this idea that pay taxes first, ask questions later, seems to be the mindset of someone who's been colonized by the corporate military spy agenda in her mind. And let me point out that her book, No Logo, it says no logo. Okay, and you look at the upper right-hand corner of the title, the cover page of No Logo, is a little R with a circle in it, which means it's a registered trademark. So no logo is a logo. Is that meant to be ironic, or is she just a moron?
So, our observations, perhaps her observations were different. You and I are in the crypto community, so we observe different things than she does, and perhaps her observations, she was looking for what she wanted to see, and perhaps we were looking for what we wanted to see. But our observations, as we went to Lote 23, for example, which is a weekly gathering of Puerto Ricans, and there are lots of new residents, anybody who's American and moves there becomes Puerto Rican, essentially, because it's just like we live in North Carolina. We're Tar Heels. We weren't born and raised here, but we're Tar Heels now because we live in North Carolina. We're residents. So if Brock Pierce moves to Puerto Rico, he's a Puerto Rican. He lives there. He's Puerto Rican. It's a part of the United States. We saw loads of born and raised Puerto Ricans at this weekly gathering. There were thousands of people. There were so many people at this event, and apparently it's well attended and packed.
Yeah, where was Naomi Klein at these events? These are the young people of Puerto Rico, this generation that's embracing new technology, venture capital, startups, cryptocurrency, which is the way to take the solar energy projects she talks about and to network them and to capitalize them and to proliferate them and to create something that would be crypto solar generated power distribution. Where was she at any of these events? I mean, she likes to lecture folks and say, look, I'm a lefty, I have moral superiority, but I don't want to have any skin in the game. I don't want to take any chances. I'll go on Democracy Now! And Amy Goodman and pontificate for 30 minutes, but God forbid that I actually do something, except, just wave my hand and give it like a benediction over something that I say should be, but never is.
And I want to quickly wrap up with this. We pointed out what crypto is about, and that is a response to the bailouts of the banks using our tax money and basically laundering fraud on behalf of those banksters. And secondly, part of the issue that she addresses, which is the disaster zone that is the electric grid there, is partly because they don't have sovereignty. They have a very bizarre situation in Puerto Rico. We covered it. They have the Jones Act. They have to import all this oil from America. It costs twice as much as anywhere else. And what cryptocurrency involves, and what we've shown and demonstrated and we talked about, is it has individual sovereignty. So while they themselves have a domestic issue of should they be a state, should they not be a state, regardless, they are a colony. They are a weird sort of, they're not fully a state. They don't have full rights of a sovereign nation. They don't have full rights of a state within the United States. So at least with cryptocurrency, they could establish individual sovereignty.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a fantastic city, a fantastic place. Old San Juan is like a European city. That's why we're probably going to end up living there.
I'll always wear this.
Right. Well, we got to go. Take a break. This ran fantastic in Puerto Rico. That's probably why we're going to live there. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Well, we got to take a little break, but don't go away. When we come back, we'll actually be doing stuff again from Puerto Rico. Don't go away. Welcome back to the Kaiser Report. I'm Max Kaiser. To wrap up our Puerto Rico series, we have one last interview, and it's with Adela Toulon Forrester, who is a lawyer out of Washington, D.C., specializing in cryptocurrency. She also hails from the nearby Caribbean nation of Dominica. I started by asking her about the confusing regulatory regime around cryptocurrencies. At the moment, the SEC says ICOs are securities. The CFTC says cryptos are commodities. The IRS says it's property. And FinCEN says it's money. I asked her for her thoughts on this issue.
What they're trying to do is try to apply or put a call out, I should say, to people that are missing the registration or the reporting. So they're just putting on a wide net, if you may. So every single regulatory agency seems to want to have, some kind of involvement so that they're not missing those who are not doing the reporting.
Well, talking to people in the crypto space, they seem like surprised by all of this. And yet, I have worked on Wall Street for many years, and it seems like the least surprising thing you could imagine.
I'm really not surprised, to be quite honest. I mean, regulators gone regulate, right? So it's not surprising.
Let's talk about the SEC for a second. They've subpoenaed dozens of ICOs, initial coin offerings. Now, despite this, there's a lot of ICOs being pitched, right? The ICO pitches are continuing. Are they playing with fire at this point?
Well, I don't know if I would go ahead and, paint such a wide brush and say that they're playing with fire, but I certainly think that the SEC has put out a warning call, if you may, to just kind of let people know that, look, there are rules that are in place here that you probably need to follow. You might want to look into them. So, I always recommend talking to a lawyer, but somebody who does specialize in crypto and securities.
So walk me through what it's like. So I'm running an ICO and I get a knock on the door. It's the SEC and they've given me a subpoena. What does that mean and what do I do next? Walk me through what happens.
Right. So I just have to make it super clear that I'm not a securities lawyer at all. This is not my little bucket. But what I do say is what I have seen in at our firm, we deal with Jason Seibert, who is the world's premier crypto securities lawyer. And what I have seen is that the very first thing we do is to reach out and start having a friendly conversation and try to take it from there, from a conciliatory side of things.
Is the feeling at this point with all these regulators coming on board, do they work together or are they distinct?
Well, one would say that maybe they don't. I mean, so there was the letter from FinCEN to Wyden recently, right? And what it did state was that, look, FinCEN might have regulatory purview over tokens issued by, these administrators. What it does say to me is that there's a little bit of confusion about turf, right? So I don't know exactly what it means. I'm just kind of like watching it play out. But what I can say, what I do know is that they are sort of saying that, look, depending on the way that a token works, it might be acting as a currency and therefore like under the FinCEN purview.
Right, so, sticking on FinCEN for a second, it didn't get as much attention maybe as the other regulatory rulings, and yet it seems to be kind of like the most dangerous because they're talking about the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network and with jail time and this type of thing. And what does it mean legally, to the... Is it fair to say that it is a cut above in terms of their seriousness, to lack of a better phrase?
Well, it's really serious, actually, because you're dealing with a bunch of things here. If you are an MSB, a money services business in the space, it means that you're subject to record keeping and reporting. That means above a certain threshold, you're actually collecting data from every single one of your customers. And above a further threshold, you're reporting to FinCEN, who then reports to the IRS. So yes, there are fines. There are the more serious consequences like jail time. So yeah, it's a way more serious thing. I do think it's setting a sort of dangerous precedent, that letter that I earlier referenced, because what you are, let's say there are 100 ICOs that deploy this year. Okay, that's 100 more chances for. If people are just blindly going out and registering as MSBs, they're financial institutions. That confers the ability or the responsibility on their part to take and collect data, personal information on the people that they conduct business with. Can you imagine what a disaster that would be? So 100 more opportunities to collect data that is being stored. How? Where? Can you just imagine that the hacks?
So you're saying that folks are
privacy issues,
blindly becoming money service providers, MSPs.
MSB.
B.
Yeah.
And without maybe thinking about what this means in terms of collecting all that data.
Right.
Because that has to be ironclad without any, room for error in a lot of ways. And
Right.
you've opened yourself up to a whole lawyers coming in with green shades and eyeglasses. I mean, this is what they do all day long.
Exactly, and there's nothing in the Bank Secrecy Act that speaks about the protection of customer data. But we certainly know in real-world application, look at these recent hacks, that it is extremely possible for these things to happen. What about these actors? Are they taking your information and selling them to somebody else? I mean, I think, I can definitely see it from the regulator's point of view, something I've never thought that I would say. But I think from the consumer point of view, it is certainly concerning, and it might be a dangerous precedent.
Well, let's talk about the CFTC chairman, Giancarlo, right? So he seems to be a jovial chap. He went before Congress and he said some nice things about the crypto community and how the growth of tomorrow, and he quoted some of the catchphrases, and people were like, see, we're in good with the regulators. At the time, I said, it's kind of like good cop, bad cop. This guy, he's a regulator. He's not your friend necessarily. I mean, they have a very specific job to do. Now, does the CFTC matter in relation to the SEC or FinCEN? So how do those stack up in that sense, in a category of seriousness, I guess?
Well, I would worry about the SEC a little bit more. No offense to the CFTC. I would worry also about FinCEN. But as to what you said about his jovial nature and the regulators that are at least trying to show that they have an open mind to this, because as you know, there's a lot of talent that is moving out. There's a great exodus from the United States to warmer climes, favorable jurisdictions. Just in terms of seriousness, I would kind of worry about all of them, but look, there's nothing against cooperation without putting your client's information or their livelihood or their freedom at risk. Prisoner's dilemma, it costs nothing to be nice and to have a conversation, because there's certainly really intelligent ways of going about the end, and even sometimes through just education of, what the client is actually doing. So the real versus the perceived risks, addressing that directly.
How much of a chill has all this had on the industry?
How much what?
A chilling effect, if any. I mean, how much, if any, has this affected the industry, Adela?
Right. Well, so through real world application, what we see is a lot of clients coming in. They're very scared. They don't know what to do, what their limitations are. A lot of the black letter law, most of the black letter law does not speak directly to crypto companies and crypto businesses. So, there's a bit of fear in the community, but, we try to assuage people's fears and let them know, this is how the black letter can apply to what you're doing. So we do, as you can imagine, we do a lot of ideation, try to sort it out, all law reviews, and here's how you could possibly do this versus, just going blindly, game theory.
All right,
Yeah.
let's talk about an individual state, Wyoming. They
Yes.
passed some new pro-ICO legislation, basically contradicts everything the SEC and FinCEN have said. Now, what do you think is going on here, and is this going to be a states versus the feds matchup?
Well, possibly. I mean, by the way, thank you, Wyoming, for being sane about some things and really addressing a lot of the fears in the community, right? Maybe if all the states acted like that, we wouldn't see such a mass exodus of talent, and maybe we won't have a brain drain in the next,
The analogy
7
is
years.
with the pot industry, the marijuana industry.
Right.
In America, one state passed laws that made it permissible for medicinal marijuana. Other states followed suit. People are thinking, well, Wyoming, they're going to get a big benefit. They'll get a tax benefit. They'll get a tech benefit, a drain gain. Other states will want that piece of that action. Is that what people are hoping for? And first of all, do you think the Wyoming, is that going to be robust, what they're doing? Is that for real?
That's only left to be seen, Max. I certainly hope so, because there's so many jobs, there's so many ways to capitalize on favorable legislation right now. I mean, we see companies like Academy popping up, just doing blockchain education. I just sent my son to a Bitcoin coding course. there's so many jobs available in this industry. So why states would kind of ignore those reality, I don't really know.
All right, finally, you're from the Caribbean. What do you think of the crypto community moving to this area? You know, Puerto Rico is becoming Crypto Rico. Also, the new Eastern Caribbean Central Bank announcement that they will pilot the Bit blockchain technology. Your thoughts?
It's awesome. Look, I think you've heard me talk about the Caribbean and how I would love to see it be the most friendly crypto jurisdiction in the world. And I'm between the States and the US, so functionally that works for me. And so whilst I would not like to see a brain drain in the country, in the United States, it is nice to see that the states will sort of, the Caribbean nations could possibly capitalize on such a cool industry, frankly.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Crypto Caribbean.
Yes.
What could be better?
What could be better?
All right, well, Adela, thanks for being on the Kaiser Report.
Thanks for having me again.
All right.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for this edition of the Kaiser Report with me, Max Kaiser, and Stacey Herbert. Want to thank our guests, Adela Toulon Forrester, lawyer specializing in cryptocurrency. If you want to catch us on Twitter, it's Kaiser Report. Until next time, bye, y'all.